of champions. And just to talk about his influence, obviously helping with the shot calling, all the ganks are going through his lane. His individual performances have been outstanding. Everything Madlife has done this season. I mean, honestly, just the overall match score, so much of it has to be attributed to how impressive Madlife has been.
Nidalee and Gangplank, the bans here, of course, those have been Crush and Roach's go-to champions.
I really want to see the Bard.
And Bubbling.
Madlife Bard.
Yeah, I would not try and put Bubbling on that Nidalee. So, Kalista will be banned here against Kramer. And of course, we are on patch 6.3, so the Kog'Maw is going to be a big pick here, probably for CJ, who likes to run with these big time 80 carries for the late game.
Well, we saw Rox Tigers have a smashing performance with early drafting on Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw's really interesting to conceptualize now. If you think back to last time Jugglemore was in the meta last year, it was all about Trinity Force Kog'Maw, right? As we actually do see a blue side Kog'Maw ban very interestingly from CJ, but Trinity Force, the thing about it was you could build Sheen and Phage and actually have a pretty decent laning phase when you hit 6. Now you have this weird item ramp up when you're building a pickaxe, a blasting one, 1,000 gold recipe. It feels like Kog'Maw's laning is actually weaker in some ways, itemization-wise, than before. Obviously the W is loaded with stats and to some degree makes up with it, but things are actually quite interesting just tracking Kog'Maw as he develops through the season. We'll have more time in another game though, and sadly the Bard hits the ban list as well.
Well, this leaves Lulu up though, which is a great pickup for CJ considering Sky is not the strongest mid laner, and so makes it so it's easy for him to get out of the laning phase relatively unscathed and then help buff up Kramer in the late game. Thinking about this, of course, the Alistar available as well. Madlife's go-to picks have been Alistar, Bard, and Thresh this season.
Braum priority might go down a little bit. That's been the other champions look good on, but with Kalista banned, you don't really have the initiation options for the Braum. It's going to more purely be disengage and peel, so Alistar, Corki, Lulu. Those are the 3 champions that really leap out as first picks, and at least considering the Corki with this first pick.
Yeah, they hovering over that. Of course, still very strong in spite of the Phosbomb nerfs that came in on this patch. He's still doing an extraordinary amount of damage. I
think Riot's taking a pretty light touch with Corki. I think he's still right up there in terms of the strongest champion, the strongest picks you can come up with. Speaking of picks, we saw a Zed yesterday, so haven't seen much Zed this season. Only 2 games of Zed, I believe, between Mickey's blind pick of him and then yesterday Frozen having a go.
That was such a terrible pick for that team
What's
composition.
wrong with Zed? You can assassinate the Lissandra, right? Yeah?
Right, I think that's how Zed works.
Just kill her, right? No, that was a sidestep, we'd have to say.
So Crush likely to go ahead and take the Elise here. Very big priority perhaps for the Fiora. We don't normally see it picked this early in the draft.
Have to think the Poppy answer will be there. 9-0 and 11 was Antara's score in Game 2 as Poppy last time we saw him play, and okay, the laning phase is not wonderful, but you can play around it. She has strong CC, excellent lane to gank for, and will probably fit the comp, but might actually be an 80 carry Corki if we see this Lulu lock in.
And this is dangerous. I really don't like Corki 80 carry with Lulu. We saw KT try and run it with Zillion mid. It just doesn't do enough damage in the late game, and if they're going to choose Poppy too and not a more high damage top lane pick, they may be pretty weak come the late game, especially if there's a lot of heavy MR itemization from Kongdoo.
I mean, there's other issues. You think about the draft. Okay, you could flex the Lulu to top, but the matchup against Fiora is certainly not wonderful. Another champion she can comfortably outscale. Speaking of scaling, going with the Ezreal 80 carry, and have to assume it's going to be support Morgana, though Edge. I think we've actually seen him play that in competitive play maybe once before, but again, I guess there is the outside chance of a Morgana mid.
Yeah, this is it's going to be interesting, taking that Ezreal so early on, but Kongdoo doesn't have any wave clear right now. They may have to end up picking a Victor or something like that just to provide themselves with a little more holding power while they scale into the Fiora and the Ezreal for the late game.
Saw Kramer play 80 carry Quinn before. Again, it could be Antara taking it in top. There's actually a lot of ambiguity about this draft from CJ, but the question is, does it work? Because we've got this Lulu. They've definitely committed to the Lulu pick. You're looking for someone to really synergize with Wild Growth. I guess you could go aggressive with the likes of the Quinn, but we're seeing a lot of change-ups at the last moment. It seems like they're pivoting in terms of the draft. There is the expected Poppy lock-in, and I have to agree. I mean, you do have the Unburrow into Wild Growth in terms of initiation, but how do you see this whole CJ draft shaking out?
I think that the Kindred was a much better choice right there, just so you have another form of damage, because the Rek'Sai really not going to be providing very much. Even the Gragas at least could isolate a target for Corki, and this composition is going to struggle in the late game against what Kongdoo is drafted, because they simply just won't have the DPS to win team fights.
Fiora split push will certainly be strong. Poppy can in general hold her down, but certainly doesn't have any kill potential of her own outside of ganks coming through from Bubbin, but you've already mentioned it, very low damage ganks, unless we see Titanic Hydra with the sort of thing that does work on Rek'Sai, but we don't see in competitive play very often. And look at this, Edge is going to go to the mid lane Varus, and this is a counter pick that we saw Athena piloting back at IEM Cologne. You can match the line wave clear with the Lulu, and you're talking about backline threat. You actually do have quite a bit to be worried about. There is a Poppy and an Alistar. Varus might actually be at some risk in these fights in terms of being safe, even with Morgana and her black shield to factor in.
I think the bigger factor is the turret diving that they can do with this composition, CJ.
Oh boy.
And Varus, if he's ever alone underneath the turret, the Alistar, Lulu, Rek'Sai, Poppy, even the Corki with the package, these are all champions that can easily take Edge out in the mid lane.
The fun thing here is that we talked about how CJ's damage will fall off. You know, we were looking for them to be proactive in the early game. To the nth degree now when you see the Varus mid lane. Everyone needs to take their turn, making a guest into mid. Make sure that Varus is never sitting there with his flash up and safely wave clearing. As you mentioned, 3 champions in the CJ lineup and the Lulu ult to really promote turret diving and keeping down Edge on the Varus.
Yeah, that's going to be super, super important. But CJ, they need to have a strong early game, and they are last in the league in terms of gold differential at 15 minutes. They are right now at negative 1,000. So this is not a team that is known for having a strong early game. I don't know if I agree with this draft for this particular team, Papa Smith.
Look, maybe CJ woke up and thought it was opposite day in Monte Cristo, because they're going to need to do that. They need to control structures. They need to control objectives. Otherwise, the late game's looking pretty damn painful.
Yeah, it is. Okay, we're going to get into game 1 right now between Kongdoo Monster, representing their new team after transitioning out of EM Fire. And of course, CJ Entus in their final performance with this roster before Daydream comes back and BDD turns 17. Let's get into game 1.
Everybody wants to rule the world. There's a room where the light won't find you. Holding hands while
Welcome to CJ Entus versus Kongdoo Monster. Just singular. They're just one monster together. They're like a Voltron monster, I guess. Each of them forms a different part.
Look, I think we're going to all have turns having fun with talking about the monster. The monster might be evolving at some point if they start getting wins. You've already mentioned the fact that it's a one-eyed monster.
It's definitely a one-eyed monster.
Confirmed.
The worst part about it is not only is the logo the one-eyed monster, but it's sort of flesh-colored.
Stop it, Monty. We're on Riot Games. We're a wholesome, family-friendly broadcast.
Hey, I didn't make that logo, okay?
Let's talk a bit about CJ, because the one thing you can say is we're talking about the late game. It's not looking like their friend. We're talking about, okay, keep down the Varus, but the one thing they do have is earlier power spikes in every lane and an early ganking jungler who can do that with some reliability. Poppy should be able to pressure out the Fiora. Excellent lane for the Rek'Sai to gank for. Lulu's going to have the ability to push up Varus early before we're talking about level 9 tier, the blue buff coming through to the Varus to get the cooldown lowest on the Q. And the Corki, Alistar, certainly going to have a field day with Ezreal Morgana. So the one thing that you can say for CJ, keep down the Varus, but also start stacking up that newly renovated dragon, because you have to say, 4th, 5th dragon certainly would overcome some of their issues with late game team fight damage.
Yeah, and they really need to get those turret dives in. We're talking about two-tier champions.
So
Varus
many tiers.
And Ezreal. I really don't like the draft really from either team. I think if CJ was a more proactive team in the early game, this draft could be okay, but just given their tendencies so far this season. And on the other side of the coin, you have some like basically scaling across the board and low wave clear in the side lane. So CJ definitely has an opportunity to make some big plays here.
You talk about the CJ draft. It's not that different from a draft that SKT would be running last year, right? Maybe Lucian on the AD carry out instead of the Corki. But that's, again, we're factoring in that SKT very practiced on that comp, the lane pressure, the ability to take advantage of power spikes. Those were all things SKT could do with similar drafts. I think we have to have the healthy skepticism. CJ could be aggressive in the early game. Control Dragons just goes against type, given, as you mentioned, negative 1,000 gold on average at 15 minutes compared to their opponents.
Yeah, and also, interestingly, Sky has taken Cleanse this game. So I guess he's really worried about Edge's ultimate actually landing right there, or of course the bindings from Morgana. It is a bit odd that he wouldn't take TP, because TP would be very useful for turret dives later on in this game.
I miss Athena and his always teleport Varus mid. The most risky of choices, flash teleport Varus.
Well, he pulled it off, Papa Smithy.
He did. Then he left for China. And now we have Tempt, who's pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah, I don't actually think that was too big of a blow to Ever, and we have a possible gank coming in here. Bubbling lurking on the side, and see if he can get that angle. He's waiting right now for his E cooldown. And we may see him go in.
Even blowing a flash would really relieve a lot of pressure and allow Sky to overextend in this lane, but for now, Edge is playing towards the bottom side with Crush providing reinforcements.
He's actually going to get hurted over there, and here we go. He's actually going to get the flash and trade it right there. Edge taking a bunch of damage. Mad Life now down in this bottom side. Googer and Crush also in the bottom river. We'll just push Mad Life right back.
Looks like there was a split call. I felt like if Sky had flashed in and EQ'd a couple of autos, it might have been enough to take down Edge, but called off because Mad Life spotted all the reinforcements coming from the bot side of the map.
I mean, 2 summoners blown though, so the damage has been done to that mid lane, and certainly a worthy trade. Crush now going to loop back around and see if he can find Sky. Sky going to Whimsy and get Cocoon, but there's no follow-up really. Crush going to deal some damage to him. There's the piercing arrow.
Might actually provoke a recall. There's no health pots left.
Yeah, going to have to recall right now. The wave pushed up though, not that big of a deal. If Sky had that teleport, this would be a great time to use it. That's really scared of the gank that's going to come in post 6 when Crush can Cocoon him, and then the Chain of Corruption will just lock him down until he dies.
And now we can actually evaluate the 2 mirror ganks. One of them blew both summoners, the other one buys Edge maybe 40 seconds of free farm in mid. So one of them certainly to the advantage of CJ.
But Edge has a 20 CS lead already.
Wow, already? Out of nowhere, basically.
Yeah, that is very strange. And Sky really not going to get anything. Gets 1 caster minion right there, it looks like. So this is going to be a pretty significant gold lead already, and Edge has the tier, and we're into the double tier territory now, so CJ needs to press forward. This is going to be their time to shine here, but pre-20 minutes.
And this is really something the viewers, I think, can take home and conceptualize, is that if we see any semblance of a gold lead or structure lead for Kongdoo Monster when they finish those mana moons, and specifically the Muramana transformations, that's CJ missing their window. They already have almost completely magic damage in the late game. They will fall off against their opponents. They need to either start stacking the dragon or grow a golden lead primarily through structures, because they do have the earlier power spikes. It's just they don't really count for anything if you don't actually take advantage of them.
Yeah. A lot of burden on CJ here for the next 20 minutes or so to see if they can actually pull this off, play more aggressively. We see these standard lanes. Kramer's going to go ahead and sidestep there. A little dark binding. And that's another interesting question to ask Papa Smithy is Kramer the best AD carry that Mad Life has ever played with?
All right, let's go through the list. Start at the start.
Woong.
Nope.
Space.
Nope.
Space had his moments.
Give me the other options. We'll come back to Space.
That's pretty much it.
Do we count the guest appearances and the likes of Masters and things like that?
No. I would have to say On Frost.
Is it just the 3? Was there one other one?
Oh, hold on. She's gonna dive that one there. Yeah, I mean he hasn't had that many. They held on to Space for quite a long time. Certainly Woong in Space.
Loco.
Yep, that's true.
Certainly not a motley crew of top choices there.
It's an interesting question for a guy who's had a career as long as Mad Life. We talk about Frost and their success over the years, and of course placing second at the Season 2 World Championship, excuse me.
And Woong definitely filled a role when he played. He certainly didn't have the skills of some of his opponents, but was a big part of their shot calling. Seemed like a very smart player, so he's definitely one that we can underrate in hindsight, but probably was very important to the team at the time.
Yeah, Hermes too was another one that played for a very brief period of time.
I think Kramer definitely is on the track to be one of those, and we don't even know what Ghost is going to be like when he finally does get a look in. It's looking less likely that he's going to be starting on turning 17, just because Kramer
doing great.
Look at the stats we'll talk about as Mad Life not going to pick up a gank here, but first in damage percentage. Again, maybe that's an indictment more on some of his supporting cast that he has to output 33.7%, over a third of his team's damage.
I mean, you can say that, but at the same time, he also has the second highest DPM. So
that's what I was going to get into.
Yeah, he's doing really well behind Faker for damage per minute. So yes, he is doing a lot of his team's damage, and perhaps the rest of his teammates are not picking up that slack. But just from an objective DPM standpoint, he is outputting a whole hell of a lot.
I mean, you just read this one stat line: first in damage percentage, second in damage per minute, and first in percentage of team's gold. Basically, CJ is saying, all right, it's all in, all the eggs in the Kramer basket, or we're not winning.
Yeah, but he does it. Even though he has the highest percentage of team gold, he actually does deliver on that in terms of damage. So
it's Kalista.
It's not gold misspent. Let's put it that way.
And the thing is, his Kalista is so different to his Ezreal because Kalista has that earlier power spike, and we've seen him dominate team fights with Hurricane Rush, play really smartly. The Fate's Call and Mad Life, of course, is going to be big proponent using that ability. Had it banned away this game, but there's a lot to be optimistic about with some parts of this line, specifically the bot lane, and the top lane also shows some optimism. You sub in Daydream, you sub in BDD. Suddenly, who's to say where this team is on the rankings?
Yeah, and right now in this Poppy Fiora matchup, we see already a 30 CS lead sub 10 minutes here for Utara, so he has just been dominating this lane. Now, there haven't been ganks, but it's just been that pure 1v1, and they are looking for a dive here with Bubbling. They want to shut down this Fiora early, and they know where Elise is, so they're not actually going to go for it, instead safely clearing out this pink ward while Elise walks over. They don't know that Bubbling is there.
You're starting to see already some of the missed opportunities that other teams would take. For example, Edge has his flash and heal available again. He had those cooldowns down for the 4 to 5 minutes. We didn't see Mad Life, or specifically Bubbling, going and putting down deep pink wards or clearing vision, looking for the dive. It felt like the dive was begging for a good 4 to 5 minute time period there, and Bubbling made no guest at reappearances and now summon as a backup.
Yeah, and also, even though they saw the Elise on the ward, they probably could have pulled the trigger on that top lane dive against the Fiora. He's gotten some damage down. I don't think it was that dangerous, especially with the upfront damage they would have had with Untara's Poppy.
I'm just so excited to see the return of Daydream. He was always a jungler that I thought was on the up and of course left the scene, but more crucially, or more relevant to this season, we've already seen Winged, we've already seen Crown get that Brazil buff. Daydream's coming back. Who knows what level he'll be at?
The Brazil buff is real.
2 out of 2.
Yeah, Daydream was always a really fun jungler to watch because he's a very aggressive player, generally speaking. So he started out as one of the most aggressive junglers actually in Champions when he first came over from Zenix Storm and found his way onto the CJ Blaze roster.
But he never took that next step. It felt like both he and Emperor were almost at that highest level, but never quite got there, left the scene. And now, he hasn't been on a professional team since I believe it was April when he left Keith. So we don't know which Daydream's going to show up, but again, he's competing at least in the lineup against Bubbling, who has shown minimal to nothing this season.
Yeah, I think that's a very diplomatic way to say it, Papa.
Well, I try to use the adjectives that don't include things like dumpster fire and horrible, awful.
You leave those for me, right?
That's you. You do you, Monty.
It's the only thing I'm capable of, Papa Smithy.
Was announced today that you'll be doing you at IM Katowice next week.
Yeah, should be fun. Heading over there.
We're only going to be missing...
Watch some mid-tier teams from around the world compete.
Yeah, mid-tier SK Telecom World Champions, yep.
Versus mid-tier Origin, mid-tier Fnatic. At least we got the top-tier Chinese teams.
We got a good top-tier Korean Challenger team.
It should be a fun tournament, but unfortunately, not with teams that are at the top of the standings in really any league from around the world.
Who's the favorite, Monty? Money where your mouth is.
SKT.
I agree. Sad though, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately. QG's macro mistakes don't fill me with a lot of faith. They are very mechanically gifted, they're great at team fighting, but those macro mistakes, their lane swapping makes me tilt.
But I mean, like, let's take the macro word off the table. That's obviously our word. We have the double color cast here. But let's think of just a simpler problem. LPL's been on 6.1 till this week.
Yeah.
So it's going to be 3 patches potentially, to at least 2. I'm not sure what patch IEM we played on, but at least 6.3. So I mean, even that is a lot to work against.
Roach actually trying to defend his ward right here. Oh, that was a bad idea. And he's going to get chunked out. Doesn't die. Crush there on the counter gank, but man, face checking that brush. Didn't know that there was a Rek'Sai right there. Nearly pays for it with his life. They do burn his flash. Meanwhile, we saw Mad Life had to ult and flash as he got caught by a bind in the river.
It's
and
surprising.
somehow Soul is up in CS in this lane. This has been a weird matchup in the laning phase, Baba.
Very, very weird. This time we see the ult activate, at least it's here.
Yep, and Utara does not have an ultimate available right now, so he's going to try an heroic charge, flash over, and that's just not going to be enough damage there from Crush, who also flashed. That was a bit of a waste there from Crush. He didn't have any follow-up damage to secure the kill. Nope. Even if that would hit, it wouldn't have killed Poppy.
Nope.
Not with all the items that Poppy has right now.
I was actually going to talk about the items. It felt like that last gank would have been successful if it was a Sheen first from the Poppy, but actually rushed Sunfire despite the fact that she's not in a wave clear disadvantage against the Fiora.
But has been putting a ton of pressure on Roach this entire game, and now with the change to Sunfire where it does 100% of the burn damage to minions instead of 50, you really can get some nice turret chipping down. And honestly, I think that's what CJ needs right here. They should be playing the turret game, so I agree with the Sunfire first in this particular matchup with this team composition.
But do you really feel like do you really feel that Sunfire is the right choice for turret chipping when you take into account that you're going to be giving aggro and potentially taking
Edge caught out here as he's going to go try and get his blue buff, bubbling with the wild growth on him to try and turn this around. Chain of Corruption already down, going to lock up Sky. Sky has no cleanse for this. Bad Life coming in. Bad Life going to pop his ult at the last second. Fiora going to get that first blood onto Mad Life, and the melee still going on. Kramer comes in, cleans up Roach, and that'll be a 2-for-1. CJ getting poked on the exit. They would love to get this blue buff too, but the monster is not going to give it up so easily. We're going to see Untara come in exhausted, and there's the ultimate. He's going to get tagged on the backside by a binding and taken out by Edge, but Cougar still on the run here. Another couple kills go through, one for each team. Who ended up with the blue buff in that fracas?
It
Looks
was
like
Lulu.
It was Sky in the end. And they're going to take a Dragon too, at the very least. So CJ definitely coming out with some nice play there in order to grab a couple of objectives and win the kill battle 3-2.
Really nice use of their timings. We spoke about CJ needing to be completely pitch perfect on the timings. Trinity Force Corki was responding there. Rite of Ages already completed. It was a really nice teleport from Untara to get into the back line, but CJ desperately needed a little engagement like this. I want to show you just how smart Untara was on the re-engage. Edge was caught out. This is the reality of Varus. If he's ever caught in transition, he's going to struggle a lot. Guga and the Kongdoo monster don't want to commit, and Untara gets nice, has exactly the right range on the heroic charge to get the start, and this is just CJ playing with the power spikes. We've got tiers stacking up. We've got lots of scaling happening on Kongdoo Monster. They really shouldn't have taken this fight.
No, you're fighting against a Trinity Force Corki with double tiers. This is not a smart point in the game for CJ to go for this. That's a great binding, actually, from Cougar, and that sets up the easy kill for the piercing arrow.
But it's not 20 minutes. The tier is still only just observed on Edge, so no chance of the Muramana anytime soon. It's gone for the earlier power spike, which is smart. Not looking to rush down the Mana Moon transformation just yet, but the Dragon goes over and the gold lead's only slight, but at least the start of something positive for CJ Entus.
Yeah, Crush now going to come in and start getting beaten on by Untara, and he's got nowhere to go. There's the Chain of Corruption. Where is he going to land? Going to land right there. Sky's going to grab the kill. Chain of Corruption still locking people up, though. Untara trying to turn this around, and he's going forward with the wild growth. And there's the tag from the ultimate. Roach has to just dash over the wall. Bubbling, not going to get it. The Corrupting Potion gets enough HP to make it work, and Bubbling's still going to look for this, but Roach is not really in a place. Hedge is having to get tied up here, and that means Kramer and Sky are going to have some free time now with this mid lane turret. True Shot Barrage used just to clear it out, but here's the assault on the turrets by CJ. They're going to get some pressure on top as well. I mean, Bubbling should just walk into lane right now and start autoing this turret. That's what he needs to be doing.
It's a really nice rotation from CJ Entus, moving everyone mid while you saw Bubbling tussling and tying up Edge.
They could have gotten that top turret so easily, CJ.
Nope,
Instead, they're going for
the
their
Rift Herald.
That's a big mistake right there. They had the Sheen already onto Antara, and if Bubbling had just walked into lane, the tower definitely goes down.
Felt like they missed out on at least one easy turret, potentially two, depending on how decisive their rotations were, but they get the Rift Herald. We'll see if that really leads to anything.
Well, they put it on Sky, so that's an interesting choice. That's the only wave clear in this game. I think I would actually rather have it on anybody but Sky.
Ah, well.
Too bad.
Too bad, Monte Cristo. Honestly, Untara once again, knowing his limits. Oh, Guga for super low. Kramer's not done. Just misses on the rocket.
Soul gets a nice trade in on the back end, and he's going to fire off that True Shot Barrage. But this is where the real turret pressure is going to have to go down here for CJ. They're in the sweet spot right now when it comes to their composition. And keep on moving forward, and Tara getting, you see all these minion waves just slamming into the turrets across the map.
Tara looked really good in the last couple of engagements. Poppy clearly has conceptualized this champion very well. Juve of the promising top laners have really picked up their Poppy mechanics.
He's just destroying Roach in lane. He's 50 CS up right now. You
Pounding
can see,
him.
yeah, he's getting pounded. Squish the Roach.
Apt. And look, took a couple of extra minutes, but he will get this top turret. Again, they're not growing the lead they need, but it is CJ playing to their win conditions at least.
So here we go. That lead is about to open up in a big way. Bubbling is going to come by, and he's going to try and push this one. Crush does land the cocoon, so they don't get quite as many autos off on the turret. And Tara now with the deep wards, and he's just going to keep pushing forward the top side, but recalling on top of that pink ward.
Gonna go back, probably has enough gold for the Iceborne Gauntlet, does, so the pressure's certainly not gonna end in top. We've already seen really solid TP play out of Untara. Second dragon is spawning. Of course, this is reworked dragon in 6.3, so it does give that true damage burn onto turrets and help an already strong sieging lineup. Siege even harder, potentially dive as well. But this is definitely not a dragon that Kongdoo Monster is any position to compete for. Do they know that though, Monster Cristo?
Yeah, this would be quite unwise with Poppy's TP up and the advantage that Untara has gleaned. And Bubbling actually is going to get caught out right here with the chain CC Cocoon into the Chain of Corruption. They're going to take the blue buff. Mad Life still getting some zoning done. They do draw out the Lulu ultimate, but they trade it. And Untara actually TPs here. Whoops. Gets into the back line, but that means Roach gets some quality time with a tier 1 in the top side.
Seems like they communicated really poorly with Untara. I don't know really whose side that is on. Remember, it's still a minute to Dragon. It's going to be free turret damage. Roach had no window into getting any pressure in this lane.
Comes Untara, wants to at least
Long lane.
Try and punish here. Mad Life is also looping around through the enemy jungle. There comes Untara, denying some of those dashes with his W. There's the knock-up, and here's Mad Life to help finish off this kill. Knocking him around, and that'll be it. Untara takes his second kill of the game. Untara now with 100% kill contribution for his team.
They send many members top. 20 seconds till Dragon goes down. Maybe they're willing to trade an inner turret for potentially the first Dragon, and really argue with them because it's Elise relieving pressure here. Speaking of pressure.
Yeah, but Lulu's going to take the mid turret. There it goes. And they get more deep wards in. So the shutdown onto the Spore has been great. 2 deaths already, 140 CS to 205. So Untara really doing work. And now that they have a 5K gold lead, this is where they need to be, and this is where they need to stay.
Indeed. Once they saw Elise was the one that was trying to wave clear on top, they knew there was no real chance of Kongdoo answering that top lane pressure with a dragon. So right now they're shopped and walking back into the dragon area. No defensive vision there for CJ, but you know it hasn't been started just yet. It all comes back to the draft. We're looking for CJ to hit their timings. They've largely managed to do that, and it's just a bit of a shock. You know, we weren't really impressed with either side of the draft, but it's the real big issue that Kongdoo picking scaling against a team that has to win in the early game seems like a big, big risk. And in many ways, they've been punished, and specifically by Untara in top.
If you look at Kongdoo's preparation for this game, though, and you look at CJ's early game statistics, you're not actually worried about them doing anything at all in the early game. So some would say that this might have been a good strategy just to play the outscaling game against CJ.
I just don't think they needed to go into double tier, Monty. I feel like one tier, maybe. 2 tiers. I don't
think they needed to take that fight at blue buff. That's what I think. I think they should have just given it up.
Well, didn't get that. Instead, they went for a compete, and now the pressure game's certainly getting away from them. They haven't lost their mid turret yet, but we do see that Trinity Force Corki is going to get some free time with it. And this is the other darker side of mid lane Varus, where you lose your outer turret, and then you only real safe place to farm is so shallow, so close to your own inhibitor. You have no map pressure whatsoever in mid.
Now with the Dragon available, CJ turn their sights on that and get the second buff there, which is going to be very helpful for them when it comes to burning down the tier 2s.
Means that everyone is turret taker, at least goes in that direction. It was a nice change to really promote second Dragon, which was largely an afterthought. It was really only a stack towards the third and thus the fifth.
So I have a question for you, Papa Smithy. I don't know the answer to. When you have Dragon's Wrath, the new Dragon's Wrath, does it apply every time a champion hits it? So can you get 5 stacks on a turret over those 2 seconds?
Just watching Mad Life.
Yeah, gonna have to ult right there, and it is gonna get tied up after that. A wild growth used just to make sure he gets out safely.
I believe the answer is yes, but I don't know 100%.
Because I don't know if it's just 1 stack that will refresh every time a champion hits the turret, or whether you're actually adding 5 stacks, each burning over those 2 seconds.
Well, actually, it's quite an important distinction to make.
Yep.
Because it's do you push multiple turrets, or do you all focus down one is the big question there.
It is.
Maybe someone on Twitter knows, can let us know.
Yeah, some of these new changes, it's hard to say because they're not documented, so.
I'm pretty sure it would apply to the same turret, otherwise it would really push, kind of pigeonhole the buff into one specific use case. Split pushing.
Right.
But again,
one would think, one would assume that that is correct, but I don't know for sure.
Let's say yes and hope so. Otherwise, Middley's even stronger, split pushing's even better.
The turret is on fire.
Not quite the NBA Jam reference we're usually making when we talk about on fire, sadly.
It's also less exciting for stone structures to be on fire.
They still do burn, you can confirm.
What kind of stone is that? What kind of fire is that, actually?
Unreinforced stone and fairy fire.
Fairy fire, all right. Okay, well, finally CJ gets that outer ring down. So it's time to start thinking about setting up some sieges, trying to play with the 4-1 split push, because that Poppy is actually able to split push against the Fiora at this point in time, interestingly enough. Probably going to get caught out again in the enemy jungle. Going to unburrow it. Now they're going to come in. TP's coming in for both top laners right now. Cougar just melts, and now Untara getting over to the side. Nice knock-up. Going to force the repel there from Crush, but they don't have the finisher. Meanwhile, Untara is wild growth and chasing Soul around underneath the turret. Does get cocooned, and he will have to back off, but man, he spent a lot of time just dealing with that Ezreal.
Are you looking forward to the negative 20% damage from turrets if they pick up 4 dragons on this Poppy Monte Cristo?
Well, this is what they need to do. They need to play aggressively and attempt to close this game. They're going to just take a blue buff for it, which isn't what they wanted, and in fact, they may give up the top tier 1. So not much gain there, a kill. But the gold lead remains even, and they don't take any further objectives. So actually, with the dust settles, that was a pretty good fight for Kongdoo.
The question is, can Roach ever get to a spot where he can out-pressure Poppy when he's consistently been at least an item behind? It feels like both the farm and the kill involvement means it's going to be a struggle. It's the second time Bubbling's provoked a fight with his face, but largely goes well, but not actually finishing off the kills.
That was such a good flash from Untara.
It was smooth. It looked like one motion.
I was like, how did he get over there? Because it looked like he just heroic charged, but that was some really nice Poppy mechanics.
In general, his ability to link in the ultimate for the knock-up, and as you mentioned, just how smooth he was on the flash. This guy's Poppy next to his Fiora really needs to be respected.
Yeah. surprising that he started the season just
Maokai.
playing Maokai only, and this is where we've come with him already. Fun to watch him play. Here we go, Mad Life now with the ultimate. They're going to try and find Crush. Crush will get bounced around and ultimately killed. Untara is meanwhile just soloing Guger up here.
I mean, he's not really solid. This seems like a 1v3, actually.
Okay, he's 1v3 and Guger solo at edge up here, Papa Smithy.
And this is the issue with some of these Varus comps, is let's conceptualize team fights. If Untara ever gets this far ahead of his opponents, if he ever gets tanky enough, he runs at 3 squishy backliners. They all have to kite back, and you just kill the tank who's diving alone in the front. Like, team fights are so hard to navigate when you're even, or not even ahead as Varus, and the reality is, and the proof of the pudding is clear on the Rift.
Yep, and they will take the Baron here at 28 minutes. Not even a contest. Roach doesn't have TP. He was just trying to take a turret, so they got something out of the deal. But now, this is really scary. CJ with that second Dragon buff with their siege composition. They have the Baron buff. They can split push right now as well, run that 4-1 split, because Untara has been having such a good game that the Fiora is not a threat to him, really at all.
Kongdoo's comp at this point is just so far behind. Can't function as it was drafted. Gonna watch CJ take another inner turret, 4th turret of the game for CJ Entus. 3rd Dragon spawning soon, but you think of the best case scenario. We do see comps like Kongdoo's work from time to time. Specifically, we're talking about the 4-1 split, right? Where Fiora is out splitting, pushing the top laner, and you've got double AD, you've got the Morgana, and potentially the Elise for disengage. Elise has a ranged auto. You take turrets really well. If you get 2nd Dragon buff as Kongdoo monsters, you can certainly be a really strong 4-1 team. But this is the counterpoint where the frontline initiator in Poppy with Wild Growth, with an Alistar, disrupts this team comp from doing anything in 5v5 fights.
Yeah, it's really quite problematic at this stage. This has probably been CJ. I mean, honestly, it's probably been CJ's best game of the season, though. In terms of their just purely their execution, they really nailed these power spikes and put them in a very good position. They did the Baron at the right time. They've sieged up. With the exception of pushing down that top lane tier 1, it's been pretty smooth sailing.
Untara really gives no cares about anything. Why should he?
No reason at all. And now the base will be cracked here in both the mid and the top side. They're going to start collapsing, and they find Guger once again. There's no black shield. It's already on to edge. Just disengage with their ultimates. Mad Life is eventually going to die right here. Gets a little bit too far forward and hesitates before using his ultimate, but that means CJ Entus should have some time to clear out an inhibitor. No, looks like they're going to retreat before they can get one. Untara, Sky
Fiora's
too low,
coming in.
and there's the Fiora coming in from the side with the home guard flank teleport. But Untara is here to protect Sky with that W. Oh my, the damage from Kramer is ridiculous. Now Untara decides to re-engage, but they do pop that ultimate from Fiora as they take down
Kramer want to be?
Untara, and yeah, they gotta go. Preserve the Baron buff. You did the damage already.
Fiora instantly explodes the moment anyone turns onto him. Even this Lulu has gone the Luden's Echo build, the high AP build, that can just crush down Roach. Roach still 60 CS behind. Okay, it's not a Flame Horizon, but when we're talking about pressure, the amount of pressure Untara can solo put on this squishy, backline, poke-focused Kongdoo monster lineup is just insane.
Yeah, he has just been the monster's monster this game. Monstering the monsters. That's what you get with Untara.
There he is.
Adorable corpse.
He's
graces the
lollipoppy. He is
battlefield.
not adorable. He's an abomination.
The old splash art was an abomination, Papa. I'm not sure about this one. Is it really that bad still? I don't think it is.
It represents something that was truly horrid.
I can't believe that actually, like, somebody at Riot Games had to approve that piece of art. Can you imagine? Somebody at Riot was sitting there one day.
What do you think they thought when they saw the splash?
The artist brought that splash, and they were like,
That seems right.
okay, we'll put this in the game. What the hell?
Scary. Scary times. It was a simpler time. It was 2010. Maybe 2011. I think it was 2010, though.
I think it was 2010, too. A simpler time where they released a champion every 2 weeks. That was crazy.
Some of them were very balanced, like Xin Zhao.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite times. Release week, Xin Zhao. Just 1v5 your entire team. The amount of Xin Zhao pentakills I saw while playing that week was nuts. I've never seen anything like it in League before or since.
It was the first week of ranked as well, I believe. I think it was ranked release patch.
Oh wow, I don't remember that.
Good times, great memories. So CJ just keeping up the siege, trying to take this third inhibitor.
Siege J, they're here.
How did you never come up with that one before?
I don't know. You know, sometimes it takes a while. The target to get hit by the chain corruption, but there's no follow-up. Everyone else not going to get it. The hammer will miss. But
we just take into account he just took focus fire from 5 people for like literally the whole duration of Dark Binding.
Some might say Untara is far ahead in this game.
5 items and a corrupting potion. Doing all right. GA last item for the exclamation point.
I like it.
Oh, back damage crits.
Uh-oh, here comes Untara. He's on a rampage in the back line, and he's just going to get stunned, actually. He doesn't actually get some damage down, but now, there we go. Will get the wild growth popped up. He's already too low, though. Mad Life also falling quite low. Roach did get his ultimate, so he got some healing for his team, but they do finish off Crush, and it's a 5v4 now at this last inhibitor turret, and that's just not going to work. That thing is going to melt from Kramer. They're trying to finish this off. The last inhibitor, there you go, knocking people right into the fountain. Nope, Roach gets a free heal there, I guess. And they find Googer once again on the side, slam him into the wall, and take the kill. Soul, the burst, absolutely enormous. And here we go, the final push, most likely of this game. On how much CJ wants to commit to this. They still have like 30 seconds. Okay, CJ could have done that.
They're sitting on a mountain of gold. CJ, we've seen them be perhaps too defensive in their choices to finish out games, but they're going to go shop. They're going to go spend that gold. 13,000 between the teams. Double more amount of transformation. Came in probably about 5-6 minutes ago, but Untara is the one-man army.
Ezreal had his Muramana at 26 minutes, but I didn't see when edges swapped over.
It's a bit of a moot
Soul
point.
did, excuse me, not Untara. I keep thinking about Untara because he's been so great this game.
Untara on the mind.
That's what I've got now. CJ has really surprised this season.
I mean, this first or second biggest surprise, depending on how surprised you are about SKT's fall from grace. The happier surprise.
The happier surprise.
For them to win 4 matches with this lineup, again, 1 less than SK Telecom T1 is just incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible, and knowing that they have such immediate upgrades available for them in just a few short days too is definitely inspiring. For a long time, CJ, the team that we would criticize for not picking up new players, not developing new talent, and sticking to their old talent, is now brimming with these new players as we see the final assault here onto the Nexus turret. So many super minions. That's not going to be a realistic defense here. Roach in the front lines right now does manage to escape with his life, but not for much longer. They're just going to focus down this Nexus right now, and that's going to be the end of this game. Zoning out the members of the Kongdoo monster, and that'll be it. Nexus goes down. CJ goes up 1-0 in this series.
And it's not something that CJ Entus have been able to do often this season, but there was not that trademark 1,000 gold deficit at 15 minutes. They had an early game comp, they needed to control Dragon, and they needed to get early structure leads to give everyone that little edge over their opponents. It started off as a little edge, but Untara certainly decided to propel it into a big one. He was just a raid boss on the Poppy, and Kongdoo Monster very quickly had no answer for what CJ put forward.
CJ, to their credit, we said, can these guys execute the dives? Can they skirmish early? Can they really go pedal to the metal on their power spike? And the answer was yes. They got the dives in, they played aggressively, and they got all the turrets they needed. So nicely done by CJ. Shot calling looking like it's improving. And they're a fun team to watch now, and they're going to be even more fun next week.
Exactly. So much optimism around CJ moving forward. The first time in years, I'd have to say. There's a lot to be excited about with CJ Entus.
Young talent, new talent on CJ. What is this, Papa Smithy?
This is a world I like living in.
Not recycling ambition into the jungle position and holding on to players far longer than most people thought was truly a good move. Let's put it that way.
If you told me they had 4 match wins last season, halfway through this season with the same lineup, I would have thought that's about right. But with the new talent, such a world of difference that brings.
Yeah. Exciting times. Well, Kongdoo Monster loses their first game under their new sponsor. Still have a chance to make it back in this series, but pretty convincing win from CJ in game 1. They're going to have to get, I think, a better draft together to stay relevant in game 2 in a few minutes.